About whether or not Islam and democracy are compatible. This after the rise of the Islamist party in Tunisia following the first free and fair election following the Arab uprisings. We're also going to talk now about Egypt and Libya as well. Let's talk a bit about Egypt, because the Muslim Brotherhood, who are known to have a much tougher interpretation of Sharia law than are the Islamists in Tunisia, for example, they are tipped to win the elections next month. How worrying is that for you?
Well, again, here you have a lot of divides, so we should not talk about the Muslim Brotherhood as a whole. But what is interesting in Tunisia, comparing to Egypt, is that for the first time, an Islamist party won't be in the opposition. I mean, they won't be the opponents. They won't be the one who criticize the West. They won't be the one who are asking for reforms. They won't. I mean, at least from an oppositional point of view, it's quite different in Egypt because the transition has not been made through or within democratic frameworks, or institutional frameworks, if I can put it that way. They may stay attached to this opponent view, and the debate may not be very fruitful, and they may just and also we are talking about also alliances between a certain type of Muslim Brotherhood members and the former Mubarak supporters. So it's really about, again, how this Islamist discourse from the Muslim Brotherhood is going to position itself as just a neutral political actor that is making propositions for Egypt's future, or again has a counterpower who is just willing to maintain and preserve its position as a political opponent.
All right, let's bring in Robin Wright again in Washington. What are your thoughts on Egypt? Do you think there's an element of the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood have been the underdog in Egypt for so many years? They've been, barely tolerated, but illegal in political life. Do you think that that's helping contribute to their popularity?
Well, it's one of the few parties that's actually well known at this point. The great disadvantage that many of the protesters have in forming new parties is that they're starting without resources, without experience, without known candidates or known faces, whereas the Muslim Brotherhood has been delivering for decades now. But the key issue, as we discuss what comes next and this critical issue of Islam and democracy, is to understand that the elections may not be the most important thing. The most important thing is likely to be the writing of the Constitution. And this is a process that's going to play out in each of these countries for at least a year and potentially longer, and where you're likely to see very severe differences over how much, whether it's Sharia law or Islamic tradition, has in influencing the type of legislation allowed, the kinds of bodies that are created. And we saw this play out in Iran, which was, again, a democratic revolution in 1979. And it was during the first year and a half that the revolution was hijacked by the clerics, in part because of the political disorder, the differences over the writing of the Constitution. There were 6,400 amendments offered up, and groups became so angry at each other that two of them began killing others. And there were 27 members of parliament, a president, and prime minister killed during this process. So, and I'm not suggesting this is going to play out in the Arab Spring, but it is a divisive process. And I'm not sure that even all the groups that have an Islamic tinge to them, be they Salafis or the Muslim Brotherhood or the younger factions that have broken away, whether they will all agree on just how far to go either. The younger generation, for example, opposes the older leadership, not only because it wasn't elected by the party itself, but also because it takes kind of antiquated positions on the issue of women as president or Coptic Christians as president in the case of Egypt.
Gil Mikhaeli, the Muslim Brotherhood are now allowed to operate in political life. It looks like they're going to win the elections. Do you think the fact that they're not banned, they're not fighting anyone now, means that they are less of a frightening prospect? Or do you, especially someone coming from Israel, are you still concerned about what's going on?
Yes, I'm concerned. And again, we don't know. There are many scenarios possible. The worst case scenario is not inevitable, but is relatively probable. The problem of Egypt are 100 times more complicated than Tunisia. Tunisia is a small, relatively small nation. There are 10 or 11 million. There are more than 80 million Egyptians. Literacy, birth rate, poverty, create huge problems. The Israeli-Palestinian issue is much more present than in Tunisia, and it's a very important element. And in Egypt, there is another question. We asked whether or not Islam is compatible with democracy. In Egypt, there is another very interesting question, whether or not being Egyptian means necessarily being Muslim, or being Arab necessarily means being Muslim, because there aren't any Jews anymore in the Arab world, and the Christians have a problem. And
well, the Coptic Christians are said to be in more danger now than ever before in history in the current situation in Egypt.
They have a problem, and I think the problem is not only about personal security. It's a very profound question. What does it mean to be being Egyptian? What does it mean to be Arab? When there was a non-religious, the Arab identity was invented in a way by minorities. They wanted to have something in common with the neighbors, which will go beyond religion. So there were many Christian bourgeoisie and intellectuals that were pioneers of the Arab identity. The problem is that when you don't have the non-religious component, what do you have? What do you have? What can replace Nasserism, Pan-Arabism, etc.? Of course, it's the idea of the Islamic Ummah, of this common destiny, this huge community, which is more than a religious community. And this is a problem which is only theoretical in Tunisia, but it's very practical in Egypt. So Egypt is really a very, very tough case. There is another element which is very important, is the role of the army. It's completely different from Tunisia. It's more like maybe in Algeria or in Turkey. So it's a major Arab country, very, very important in the region, very unstable at the moment, with a huge potential to create huge problems. Imagine just, if they will have to close the canals, the Suez Canal, for security reasons. I mean, the outcome could be incredible.
Does Israel have any plans of how to deal with that in the future?
Pray.
And Robin, I wonder if you'd like to come in and respond to that. We're talking about the situation in Egypt.
Well, I think that Egypt is going to be the bellwether for the entire Arab world. Tunisia is really important because that's where the Arab Spring began, and that's where the first election was held. But Egypt has always been the intellectual heart and soul of the Arab world, the country, 22 countries, 300 million people. And so it will be far more important than any place else in determining. It accounts for 1/4 of the Arab world today. So the problem is, of course, the military has not followed through on any of its pledges, whether it's to lift emergency laws so there could be a really, truly free and fair election, or whether it's, ending the kind of repression of critics of the military's role. And it's increasingly looking like a junta. And the danger is that even if people get out and vote for the parties they want, that the military is really looking during the writing of the Constitution and this transition that's likely to play out over the next couple of years for guarantees that it ultimately is the real power. And so while we're worried about Islam and democracy, the role of the military is likely to be a determining factor in places like Egypt and to a lesser degree Tunisia.
I just wanted to bring up another point. Are we coming at this from the wrong angle, perhaps? Because these are majority Muslim countries we're talking about. And is it not the case that while in Europe and America we've become used to a secular tradition, that actually most Muslims do want their faith to play a part in their political life, and that doesn't necessarily mean bloodshed and violence? Do you think that there's something to that?
Well, I think that now political Islam does not belong only to or solely to Islamist parties. I mean, do the majority of Arab people want that Islam play a role in their daily life and the organization of politics from a moral point of view? Yeah, that's a kind of identity corner that guarantee you that some values of honesty, of social justice and so on will be respected.
Where can that be seen in the world at the moment, though? What countries can that kind of system be seen? Where can we see that? does it exist? Does it exist yet?
No, that's why Tunisia is so interesting, actually, as I said. But for example, if you look at Algeria, people who voted for the FIS, of the Islamic Front of Salvation in 1991, didn't do so because, again, they were convinced by the political ideology of the FIS, but much more because they were convinced by promises of change, and it was much more, above all, an anti-government vote. But if you go back to Algeria now, and even if the FIS is authorized to make his comeback on the political scene, people won't vote for the FIS anymore. So again, it's really a process. Even if people want to have Islam playing a part in their daily life, I think they do make the differentiation between Islam in their daily life from a moral point of view and on a kind of identity guarantee, and Islam within institution. For example, we are wondering what does Sharia mean now in Libya, in Tunisia, in Algeria. I mean, again, in Tunisia, if you take the example of Tunisia, previously it was Ben Ali and Bourguiba who were deciding the place that Islam should have in the society. So they were not secular countries, they were not secular systems. But now it's the first time that Islam can be discussed freely. And you have also, we didn't mention, for example, Salafism, but what we are seeing from the West as an Islamist trait or as an Islamist novelty, political novelty, is much more divided than what we are seeing. I mean, you have, for example, this, and also in Egypt, this huge Salafi wing. I mean, not that huge, but again, much more important than during Ben Ali's rule, who are just deeply anti-political. They don't want to talk about politics because they are anti-Hizbi, they are anti-party, so they don't want to talk about politics. They don't want to be involved in politics, but they want to be visible. And as you said, a lot of not attacks but remarks on women and so on are occurring now in Tunisia, and it was not the case. But it's also because people are freer than they were. I mean, that could be shocking, but that's also it's not just because about Islam. It's really about because of the political context that guarantee freedom and freedom of expression.
But that's democracy, isn't it, Jalila? You have to allow people to say things that you might not necessarily agree with. And if there are people in Tunisia now saying that women should wear the burqa, but they're not in the majority, shouldn't they have the right to say that? Isn't that essentially what democracy is?
Yes. Actually, I want to go back to the problem. I was thinking about the problem of identity, and this answers actually the problem of the identity, because Tunisia, there's a problem of questioning the identity of Tunisians and the Arabs, and this links the two points. There's this burqa we're seeing in the streets in Tunisia, which we're not used to see. Normally in Tunisia, we used to wear the white veil, the sefsari. So this is why people are afraid. They are afraid of those Islamists coming from I don't know where. They're imposing things we are not used to see. This is not Tunisia, it is Tunisistan. So those things are coming in the net, and people are really afraid, and it is like a paranoia. And this is why democracy, those people are boiling, they are afraid. But at the same time, Ennahda, this political party, saying that it is a party, a moderate party, should explain to people what is next. How will Tunisia be? What is the shape? What is the Tunisian identity in the future?
Right, because as we've said, they are the first country to try this out. Everybody's looking at Tunisia because it was the first country to do this.
Yeah, and this is the biggest and the biggest step. Actually, it's not elections in itself. This is like I like the way that the constitution will be. I mean, the assembly is made of, because it's like 40% Ennahda, the rest 60% is other parties. It's like a nice mosaic of like 10%.
Proportional representation system.
Yes, that's good. But I wish that they can come close together so that they don't push to the extremism. I mean, if Ennahda will be taken by its extreme part, and the others, the liberals, will take, will push to the extreme, then Tunisia will be lost. So now the exercise is a negotiating exercise, so that we put Tunisia in the center and in the path, as we say.
All right. Yeah. If I go back to a point we were making earlier, really at the heart of this debate about the religion of Islam and democracy, and about whether or not the two are compatible, because if historically democracy has been absent from Muslim countries, and I wondered if you perhaps think that there's something about the religion and the way it is that means it's difficult, it's awkward to bring religion and democracy together.
Yes, it is. It was difficult everywhere. The problem, I mean, the challenge is that to remember that real democracy, I mean, the only democracy that counts, liberal democracy, has two elements. First of all, there is the procedure that gives the power to the majority through elections and all this kind of stuff. But then there's the other one, there are the values. What actually, the list of things that even the majority cannot do. Democracy is not the dictatorship of the majority. Mm-hmm. It's more than that. And of course, it's very easy for Islamic political structures to accept the majority side. Democracy is the rule of the majority. It's a lot more complicated. It takes a lot more time to accept that even as a majority, there are certain rights that you just cannot touch, even if you have 99%. Certain things are above and beyond what any regime can do. And this is very difficult because when you come from a religious thinking framework, you deal with absolute truth. And the problem in democracy is that everything is only an opinion. Only an opinion, which means the doubt and the possibility that the one in front is telling the truth is an essential part of the political culture of democracy. And I think that people that come from a religious thinking tradition, they are in the West. What happened in the West is that the only way that they were convinced that it's opinion and not truth is they tried to kill the other. And only when they failed, they say, okay, let's live together. And I just hope that in the Arab world, they will not have to go through all this.
All right, we're running out of time, Amel. I just wanted to bring you in finally with the last word on that.
I think that's really what just to jump on that. I think that's really one of the main Nahda's interest and challenge for the future. Ennahda has been able to remobilize a lot of people, segments of the population that were not interested or did not feel concerned with politics. So now the real danger is that, okay, they have remobilized these people and they have involved them into politics, but they should not do it in a clientelistic way. It's not about, okay, we got your votes and now we are going to do our own things. No, they should continue to involve people in a pluralistic landscape.
All right, Amel Boubacar. I'm sorry, we've run out of time, Jalila. I'm very sorry. Jalila Headley-Penier, Gil Mikhaeli, Amel Boubacar, and in Washington, Robin Wright. Thanks very much indeed to all of you. And thanks to you for watching. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with another debate. This is France 24.